back to our class on the roles of identity and the stages of change. We've already discussed the parenting, the hero, the parent, the hero, and the peer roles of identity, right? And the ages that those go, from 0 to 5, and then 3 to 14, and then 11 to 25. And today we want to actually start talking about the next role of identity, which is the career role of identity. Sarah, what do you want to tell us about the career stage, just overall, general?
Well, the goal of the career stage is to achieve stabilization. So you've gone through and gained the flexibility of the peer stage, but you can't, adults can't really function with being that flexible. You need stability then. You still have that ability to empathize with other people, to be able to see their point of view, but you have your own values and you're able to
and can I just
those.
point something out about our society today that we
Mm-hmm.
really struggle with, is that I see a lot, is the lack of stability with younger adults is really kind of alarming almost. How, and not just younger adults, a lot of older adults, how easily they shift with whatever the world is saying. They're so flexible that in that 1 year they'll say one thing, and 5 years later they're saying the exact opposite thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they've learned this flexibility in the peer stage, but they've never stabilized their own person and their own position. And so they become so flexible that they bend and change with whatever the world is asking them to do. And what you'll find with that is that if you don't have the stability of the career stage, eventually the peer stage will actually overcome the hero stage and break the hero.
Oh.
So you won't have the courage any longer to stand up to the shifting changes in the world. You'll simply be so flexible that you'll just go with whatever the person around you is saying or doing. I don't know if you've seen that, but I've certainly seen that a lot.
Yeah.
In our society right now. A lot of people who've made it to the peer stage, but never transitioned and gained the stability that the career stage brings.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also like kind of thinking about the career stage
Mm-hmm.
as this is the stage where you're contributing something to society. Like, as we talk about these stages in the career stage, like when you're getting a doctorate or a master's degree, the point of that is to put something out there that contributes to your field. And that, that would be in the cognitive, in the intellectual domain. But, the career stage is just that kind of that same idea. What are you contributing?
Right, and you think about, we call it the career stage because as adults we usually go into a career of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you've got some people who go into college and they get masters, doctorates, or just college bachelor's level degrees. But you got people who go into mechanics, into
Mm-hmm.
engineering, into electronics, into all sorts of different fields.
Yeah.
And as they get into those fields are having an influence on them. And so we call it the career field, and because it's that stage of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like we call the parent stage the parent, because it's that stage, when you're mimicking your parents. So the career stage, most people are mimicking and trying to become a part of a career.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we call this one the career stage. So when does the career stage start?
So the earliest it could start is 16,
Mm-hmm.
and then it could start, after the peer stage, 16 to, I don't know what the
To
cap
whenever.
Whenever.
There's no cap on it.
Whenever you
right?
get in there, yeah.
No cap on it, because you could move into, if you're 75, 80 years old and you never moved into the career stage, but you decide, hey, I feel like I need to be more stable in who I am, you can move into that career stage even at that age. There's no limit as to when you can move into it. So and remember, when we're talking about developing through all of these identities, you're developing through 5 different domains of life. And so maybe somebody is in the career stage physically, but intellectually they're not. Or maybe they are intellectually, but emotionally and spiritually they've never moved into that, right? So, or socially. So you have to remember that you can move in and out of different stages in the different domains, and they don't always progress at the same rate.
Right.
So let's talk about the career stage and the path that people follow in this stage. And I will tell you right now that sadly, I think a vast majority of people do not actually ever move into the career stage or the career identity. And the reason, I think, honestly, the reason for that is social media. Social media holds people back from the career, from the stability that career stage gives people. Because remember that in the peer stage, the end of the peer stage is about separating from our peers, letting most of our peers go their own way, and we go our way with maybe 1 or 2 peers.
Right.
With social media, you lose that.
Yeah. Well,
there's not a natural separation anymore.
And I think I remember you talking about how the thing you're kind of, one of the things you're searching for as you get into the career stage is intimacy. And, you know, that would be why you would break off with 1 or 2 friends so that you could have that more intimate relationship. And I think social media prevents intimacy. It
Right.
prevents having those close relationships that actually mean something, and it's just more superficial.
Right. So social media can be, that's not to say that social media is all bad.
Right.
There are good things about social media, but the way that it's generally used is has a negative influence on human development.
And I think it promotes kind of an artificial sense of intimacy.
It does. It again, it keeps us from separating, right? You're already social media friends with everybody that you're in your peer group. So when you go to where you're going, you carry that with you, and that prevents you from searching out the things that you need within the career group. So let's go ahead and talk though about that. So the first thing, just like with many of these others that we do, is we search, right? And what are we searching for?
We're searching for a career.
Right. That's it. That's really what we're searching for. What do I want to be when I grow up? Right? We ask that question to people all the time. What do you want to be when you grow up? And that's what it is. I'm searching for that career, that stable force in my life. And once we find a career that we're interested in, then we start to mimic it, right? And it may be a couple of careers that you're interested in the beginning, and you start to mimic those careers. Now, here's the interesting thing, is once you start getting into a career and you start mimicking it, there are things that you have to learn. There is specific jargon for every career. And one of the problems, again, that we get with social media is that we get people who complain about the jargon because they're stuck with the jargon of their peers, of the peer identity. And so when they get into this workforce and they're expected to learn this new jargon, they get upset about it. Because they can go back to their social media and complain about all this new jargon and how stupid it is, and I don't want to have to learn this, and this is, you know. And so they go back to the peers rather than looking to their colleagues at work. And that prevents them from developing strong, intimate relationships with their work colleagues.
Right.
Right, which makes it hard. Then you're not mimicking, right? You're not even trying to move into the career stage. You're searching for a career, but that's where you end, because you're no longer mimicking. You're not using the jargon. You're not using the language of the career. You're not using trying to get to know how do these people behave? What is the social norms and etiquettes within this field? And if you don't mimic, you can't internalize.
Yeah.
And so you lose the entire process, and that's why you stay in that peer stage. Even though you may have a job, you've never integrated into the stability of the career.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but let's just pretend we do. So the first stage of change is the searching stage, and that's where we're searching for a career. We're searching for some form of stability in our lives,
Mhm.
right? After that, once we find that, and obviously, like I said, sometimes it's 2 or 3 things, and we're kind of dabbling in a couple of different things, and eventually we're going to whittle it down to what we want. But once we do find it, then like all the other stages or roles of identity, our next stage of change is to mimic, right?
Yeah, to mimic.
And what does that look like? What is?
So it would look like you searching for colleagues that fit with the previous identities that you have, that fit with your parent and your hero and your peer, and then when
But that's interesting because you say that, and I think it's
Uh-huh.
exactly true. It's an interesting thought as you start searching for a career. Oftentimes, what you're looking for is, okay, what does my internal parent tell me, right?
Mhm.
How can I contribute to the world at large, right? What job can I do? And for some people, that's going to be, I'm going to be a doctor because I can really help people and whatnot. For some people, I'm going to be a mechanic because there's good money in it, and also, keep people's cars going, and people need that. I mean, those are, it's interesting because we don't, in our society, oftentimes we put, doctors are up here and mechanics are down here in our kind of hierarchy
yeah.
and yet, I can tell you right now, I could go a lot longer without a doctor than I could go without a mechanic.
That's true. And being a mechanic, like if you can do work on your own car, how much money is that going to save you?
Right. So it's interesting that we have these hierarchies, but in the end, in reality, those jobs have at least an equal, if not the mechanic having a greater impact
Mm-hmm.
on society in all truth. So, but that's the thing is we're looking for something that fits that internal parent. That says this is a good, like for example, my internal parent would never allow me to be an owner of a cannabis shop. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to sell anything because it's contrary to my internal parent to produce and sell drugs, even legal drugs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Same thing. It would be really hard for me to sell alcohol.
I think I saw that happen with Louis when he tried being a salesman. Being a salesman did not agree with his internal parent. It felt
Mhm.
way too much like lying, and he couldn't handle it. So
Right. So when we're searching and trying to mimic, we're like, can I mimic this? Can I actually mimic this this career?
Mhm.
No, I can't. Right? Some careers you're not going to be able to. They're not going to be something that your internal parent is okay with. And if you have the courage of the internal hero, you'll reject that career.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The career is not rejecting you. You're rejecting the career.
Right.
Because your internal hero is strong enough to say, this isn't who we are. This is not something we can do, right? Now, there's also the flexibility of the peer. That can sometimes help you to be a little bit flexible in your job choice. Because
Mhm.
sometimes the career you want, you're going to be able to help a lot, but there's something that's a little bit off, and you're like, I don't know, and can I do this? And the flexibility allows you to do the part of it that you really love and find ways to kind of prune out the other parts.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things that go into it, but it is important to remember that when you're searching and mimicking, that what you start to mimic, your internal parent is going to say yes or no, right? Your internal parent is going to say, and that actually, in all truth, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, because that's actually the next one is the internalizing. Can I internalize it, right?
Right.
I might start mimicking and not even thinking about, hey, how is this affecting me? Because I'm so interested in the career. But once it comes to that internalizing stage, I'm going to reject it
Right.
if it is contrary to my internal parent, right? So I might be able to, like, say I'm young, just out of high school, get a job working at a local grocery store, and I have to sell alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
My internal parent says, whoa, you shouldn't do that. But my internal peer says, you know what? It's okay. It's okay because you're not the one selling it.
Yeah, you're
You're
not the
just-
one profiting directly.
You're
from
just
it.
doing the
Right.
transaction, and it's not like you're working in a bar,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my internal parent might be calmed down by the flexibility of my internal peer.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, like I say, if I went to work at a bar, I'm not sure that my internal peer is flexible enough to convince my internal parent this is okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the sole purpose of the bar is to. I love in the movie It's a Wonderful Life when he's he's given the gift of never having been born, and then he's going to Martini's place, and it's actually Nick's place now. And Nick says, "Hey, we sell hard drinks for guys who want to get drunk fast." And I love that because, but it's interesting because you can see even in a bar the difference in the two perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
When it's Martini's place, it's a quiet, respectful place, and they don't. And when George is starting to actually get drunk, Martini is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Can I drive you home? Can we?" Whereas Nick, when they don't have the influence of George, Nick's just like, "Hey, we sell hard drinks for guys who want to get drunk real fast," and it's, and that's not the exact quote, but more or less. So you can see that even within that career, there might be some people whose internal, my internal peer and parent wouldn't be able to work that out.
Right.
Even the low key bar, but somebody's might be able to. They might feel like, hey, I'm actually providing a service for people who really want to have a place to come and get away from the world, right? So you got to remember, whenever you're talking about a later role of identity, you've always got to take into account the earlier roles,
Mm-hmm.
because they're the ones that are going to determine whether this is an acceptable place for you to be or not. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so we search out, we find a couple of careers that we're interested in, we start to mimic, we start to do the things that the people within that career would do, and then we try to internalize that.
Mm-hmm.
If our internal parent says, yeah, we can be this is okay, then our next step.
We start to externalize those things that we're learning, like with our own personality then.
Right, and in fact, think about your example of like going to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And going to get a doctorate degree. When you first start that program, you're mostly just mimicking
Mm-hmm.
and internalizing. You're learning new things, you're doing research that your professor is doing, so you're really just jumping on your professor's research and getting to be a part of that. But by the end, you have to develop a thesis or dissertation that has something unique and different to give to the field. Basically, it's built into that education that you will not graduate until you've demonstrated your ability to externalize.
Right.
Right? So that program, most of those doctorate level programs are specifically set up to help you go from searching to externalizing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's required. Now you still have to do that in other fields that don't have these big degrees, like a mechanic, right?
Yeah.
A mechanic, you might start off by just mimicking and learning exactly how other people are doing things, but eventually you start to learn your own tricks,
Mm-hmm.
your own way of turning a wrench in a tight space. I know my dad had all kinds of his own ways of getting into tight spaces that nobody else had ever heard of,
Mm-hmm.
that he just did himself. Or I think about Dale Earnhardt, the racer, right, the NASCAR racer.
Mm-hmm.
He had a specific way of, I don't remember, I try to remember. He had a specific like screwdriver that he would put into the engine in a certain way that it would, that he believed anyways, would give him an edge.
I'm thinking about, especially if you're reading about mothers, like mothers in pioneer days and things like that, or even thinking about my own experience as being a mother, you start to learn things that you can do so well that you could do it like with your eyes closed. Like, I'm thinking I've come to a point of making no-bake cookies where I don't have to, I know exactly when to put in, the next ingredient. I know exactly how long to boil it, and I can make them so that they set up in like 5 minutes because I've made them so many times, and it's like just one of those things that I've externalized as being a mother.
It's similar when I make biscuits, and somebody, so my kids will ask me, okay, so how much milk do I put in? And I just say, you put it in until you have the right amount.
Yeah.
Because I've done it so much, and it's become, so I just put in milk until I've got it, I don't measure it. I do it my own way. It's an external thing, right? It's become my own recipe. So that's exactly. So you're externalizing, you're doing it, but you're doing it in your own way.
Yeah.
And, so now we've gone through, okay, remember, we're searching, we're finding, we're mimicking, then we're internalizing. And remember, the internalizing is where we're putting it up against that internal parent.
Right.
And we're saying,
checking it.
is this who I am? Can this be who I am? And the peer, that flexibleness of the peer is there to kind of help that parent not be too rigid.
Right.
Right. And then if the internal hero, that internal hero is the one that's giving you the courage to just say, to reject a career that doesn't fit, right? To say, no, this isn't me. And there are people who don't. They don't have that, so they just do a career that they're not happy in and they don't feel good about, but they don't have the internal hero to say, no, we'll sacrifice. We'll take less money in order to do this other career that feels more like who we are.
Right.
But if you don't have that internal hero, then things like money and stuff like that are going to have a much stronger weight in determining what you're going to do. And so that hero is there to kind of give strength to the parent. The peer is there to give flexibility, to say, hey, you know what, let's see if we can navigate this. And once you've internalized it, then like we've talked about, you're externalizing. You're now starting to do things on your own. You're in your own way. It's your own work. It's no longer somebody else's work that you're helping them with. Now you're doing your own work, and so that's kind of exciting. I think sometimes I think about working with my dad on different cars and stuff. And my dad loved mechanics and he loved cars, and so you work with him on the cars, and then eventually he'd be like, hey, can you go take care of this? And he wouldn't even be there. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute. But it's because he was helping me to be able to externalize that intellectual knowledge of being able to repair a car, which I think any car up to about, the 2000s I can fix. After that, they're just weird.
Electric.
So when it's mechanical and not electrical, I'm good. Once it becomes electrical, I'm no longer that good at fixing cars. Okay, so after we externalize that career, right? Now we've what is our next stage?
We're looking for validation.
And what is that? What would a validation in the career stage look like?
Well, I guess in the most literal sense, going back to like getting a degree, it would look like, getting the grades that you need. It would look like...
I think it's a little later than that.
Yeah.
I think getting the grades is still a part of internalizing, externalizing.
So it would be more like getting the...
It's getting a job.
Job.
Right. It's being offered a job within the field where there's somebody is saying, I'm willing to pay you money to do this thing that you've externalized.
Yeah.
I've-
So what would that look like for like a career inside of the home, like motherhood?
Mhm.
What would that kind of validation look like?
Well, I think for somebody who wants to be
I found this on the web.
who wants to be a homemaker,
Mhm.
right, and stay in the home, take care of kids, take care of the home. I think that the validation comes really when you gain the support of a spouse and other family members. So when you say, I would really like to homeschool the kids, and your spouse says, that sounds like a really hard thing to do. And you say, I know, but I've been doing some research and I feel really good about it. And then your spouse says, you know what, I will support you in that. If that's what you want to do, I'll support you in that. What can I do to help?
Mhm.
Right? They've just given you the job, right?
Yeah. Okay, I see that. Yep.
So now you've got the job. You know, if you say, I want to, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to do in the home, when your spouse and other family members show you support, that's them giving you the job.
Mhm.
It's really not that different from any other career. I think sometimes we want to separate homemaking, like, oh, homemaking, that's not even a career. Of course, it's a career. And it's a career that you start by mimicking.
Mhm.
You've searched it out. You've decided this is what I want to try to do. You start to mimic other people who are homemakers. And sometimes, like you say, you're looking at Ma from the Little House books, and you're like, okay, how did Ma take care of the home? Or you're looking at Anne of Green Gables and Marilla and that. Or you're looking at your own mother. Or you're looking at, I mean, there's any number of people that you can be looking at, fictional and non-fictional, right?
Right.
That can give you ideas and ways to mimic, and then you internalize that.
Mhm.
Is you put that up against your internal parent. Is this who I am? And is your internal peer there to help you be flexible? Be
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think I am, but maybe we need to, you know, change it up here a little bit, change it here, maybe this, and then you start to internalize that, right? Because now you put that up against those internal earlier roles, and so now you're able to say, yeah, I think this is who I am, and then you start to externalize, right? You start to take some of those things that you've been mimicking, and you start finding your own ways to do them, and your own little unique things that you put into it, right?
Mhm.
So now you're externalizing, and then in the validation stage, that's where your family are supporting you in these things that you're doing, and they're saying, yes, we want you to keep doing this. Yes, we like this. You know, that can be from your kids. Oh, we're so glad that we get to stay home with you and do homeschool. You know, or you know, your husband being supportive, or your in-laws being supportive, or your parents being supportive, right? That kind of support, where people are saying, yes, do this. Right? It's the same thing. They're saying, yes, we're giving you this job. You've applied and we've accepted you.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's basically what's happening. And so it's the same process. The process is no different. It's just that who is it that you're looking for support? You know, when I wanted to become a psychologist, I went to school. I studied hard. When I finished my degree, I applied to a couple of different, you know, internships. And a couple of people said, yeah, we want to hire you. We want you to work for us. Right?
Mhm.
That's no different than my wife did when she came. She started working in the home. She started doing stuff, and when she would say, hey, I want to homeschool our kids, initially I didn't want to hire her. I was like, no, I don't think our kids should be homeschooled. I think kids should go to public school. And it took a couple of years for her to convince me that this is the right thing to do. And so she was in that externalizing phase for stage of change for a couple of years, while she was working on her resume to convince me that this was a job that she should do. And by the time Seth was 5 years old, I was like, okay, let's give it a try. And after the first year, I was like, okay, you're hired. You're good. Let's just do this forever.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's the thing. It's not any different.
Mm-hmm.
She still had to develop the skills. She still had to demonstrate her capability. She still had to look for somebody who would support her within the field of her choice.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so these for a homemaker, it doesn't matter what career you're looking for. This same process is the process you go through.
Yeah.
So after you're validated, right? And validated really means I'm accepted into the field.
Mm-hmm.
I am, I've externalized. The people in the field have looked at my work and they've accepted it. They said, "This is good work. You're a part of this career field."
Right.
Right. Now what?
Well, next comes, I think, influencing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not for everybody, right? Not everybody becomes an influencer in the career stage.
Well, no, but not because they shouldn't.
Okay, not because they should.
Right. So in the peer stage, not everybody is going to be an influencer.
Mhm.
Some people prefer to just kind of be on the side and not really,
Right.
you know,
So you could pass from the peer stage to the career stage without ever having been
without
an
ever
influencer.
having been an influencer. In the career stage, you can, I suppose, but no, you can. No, there are people who do, who are very stable. They're able to stabilize themselves, but they've never. So when you're talking about influence, right?
Mhm.
Talking about somebody who has a position, some kind of a position of authority and leadership, whether that is an official position, or an unofficial position,
Mhm.
right? It can be an official. You've been hired, you work for a few years, and they like the work that you're doing. So now you're being asked to be an assistant manager.
Mhm.
A few years in that role, then you're raised up to being a manager. A few years in that role, and maybe they're going to take you up into the executive offices, right?
Right.
Or whatever it is. If you're, maybe you're a mechanic and you're working as a mechanic and you're just a grunt, just doing whatever you're told, but you're good at it.
Mhm.
And so eventually they say, "Hey, we need a crew chief. Would you be the crew chief for this crew?" Right? You're moving. You're gaining a position of influence. Now, that can be, or the influence can be an unofficial one,
Mhm.
where you work hard, you're really good at what you do, and so people come to you for advice.
Right.
Hey, how did you do that? Can you show me that? You may not have any official position, but people come to you because of the work that you've done. You become influential without any official position,
Mhm.
right? And so that influence can come in either of those two ways,
Right.
right? And not everybody is going to be that. I will say within the career field, it would be hard not to have that position at some point in your career.
Mhm.
At some point, you're going to need to have some kind of a experience where people are looking to you as the expert.
I guess that's because within the career stage, part of that stability is just moving up as your skills increase, as your knowledge increases. It's just kind of that, if you're really in a career and
remember, it's not necessarily moving up,
right.
right? It's
But
just
just
being the expert.
yes.
That other people are going to look to you as the expert. So, for example, in the military, you can have somebody who's been in for 3 years and is a lieutenant,
Mhm.
and somebody who's been in for 20 years and is a sergeant. Who are people going to go to when they want direction?
The sergeant.
Yeah, they're going to the sergeant. They're not going to go to lieutenant.
Mhm.
They know where to go when they need the expertise. The expertise is what the sergeant has because he's been there long, he's got the experience, he's done the work. The lieutenant's new.
Mhm.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. In fact, the lieutenant, even though technically he outranks the sergeant, oftentimes will go to the sergeant for direction.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so you have official influence.
Mhm.
The lieutenant officially is in charge. But unofficially, the sergeant is the person that everybody's going to.
Mhm.
Right, and of course the sergeant officially is in charge of the people under him or whatnot or her. So the military is a really good place to look to see that where you can see the both the official position of influence and the unofficial influence of experience, right? And so as we use that influence, right, and people come to us either officially or unofficially, our next step is to become a mentor, right? That's that person that's looking for other people who want to join that career field, and you're inviting them. But a little bit different, because in the peer stage, it's a very subtle thing. It's not a, hey, do you want to come join our group? It's just a much more subtle thing where these older people are looking, they're seeing these younger people are trying to get in, and they're just, hey, why don't you come with me to this event, right? Whereas in the career field, oftentimes it's actual recruiting, right? So your husband just recently joined the Army. He went to a recruiter.
Yeah.
Whose job it is to go out and find people to join the Army.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll see the same thing. And that's what a lot of professors are. They're recruiters. They're looking for people that they feel like will fit the mold of the career. And so you've got all these applicants who apply, and it's these professors who are looking through all those applicants and determining who's going to be a good fit and accepting them in or rejecting them. Right. So the mentor position within the career is a lot more direct.
Right.
Whereas in the peer stage, it's a very, very fine line there. That's very subtle. The way the mentors will bring in the new recruits. In the career stage, much different. And in the career stage, oftentimes the influencers or the mentors are people who have the official position of influence, right? And they're the ones who are bringing in, and although mentors are also the people who are teaching, and so you might get hired by somebody, but then it may be somebody else that's actually showing you the ropes, right? And they're both in that position of mentorship. The one as the hiring person, and the other as the training person. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then, what's our final stage of the career?
You evaluate.
What does that mean?
Evaluate. So I'm not sure that.
So what is an evaluation?
So I guess it would just be looking at everything you've done in the career and thinking about, is this enough? Is this where I need to be?
Is this enough? Is this where I need to be? Is this who I am? Right?
Right.
So you're just doing an evaluation, and usually at this stage of the career role of identity, you're not only evaluating the career, you're evaluating your entire life.
Right.
And you're doing the evaluation is where you're basically doing what we're doing today. You're going back, you're looking at your parent, you're looking at your hero, you're looking at your peer, you're looking at your career, and you're saying, does all of this fit together as one whole thing? Right? That's what you're doing. And what doesn't fit? What's wrong? And what's right?
Right.
And that's really all you're doing. That's what the evaluation stage is. It's evaluating your life. And sometimes people will do this, and they will get to a point where they decide nothing's right. And that's what you call a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
They'll look at their life and they'll be like, nothing's right. I'm going back to the beginning. I'm starting over. Right? And they'll start to be a little bit immature because they're trying to reestablish even those early things, like the parent and the hero and the peer. And so they'll go back and really face a lot of those things again. And so sometimes they'll look immature because they're trying to rebuild, because when they've evaluated, they've decided none of it's right.
Mm-hmm.
Other people might evaluate themselves and be like, yeah, this is pretty good, and then that will move them ahead to the next stage of development, or the next role of identity. That will move them into the integrated role. But if somebody evaluates themselves and they have what we call a midlife crisis, what happens?
Well, I would imagine like they're testing boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
They're, which would look like buying the flashy car or dating a younger woman or man or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of seeing what boundaries are there. Can I cross these boundaries and be okay with it?
Right.
And then maybe searching for, if they redraw those boundaries, having to get a hero to have the courage to enforce those boundaries. And
So let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
Just a thought as I'm thinking about this, because this is really fascinating. In the movie, The Incredibles,
Mhm.
right? Mr. Incredible, when he gets this new job out on the island, right? He's able to buy a new car. He's starting to do the things that he did when he was younger.
Right.
So what's happening to him?
I don't think he goes all the way back to the parent stage, because I don't
Mhm.
think he was ever quite comfortable with his career. He never liked being undercover. So I think he's more going back to maybe the hero or peer stage.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking about it, because I don't know that he's going back at all.
Right? Because he never liked that
he
career.
never let go of the internal career of
Uh-huh.
being a superhero. That's why he and Frozone will go and save people. They listen
Yeah.
to the scanners, and they become vigilantes. But he never let go of his career, that internally, right? Even though
So-
he's doing a different job,
Uh-huh.
that's not who he is, and he never
Right.
even tries to get into that career, because he's already identified. So when he gets this new job, the new job is just a validation
Right.
of who he already is. So I think what's interesting about that is when he gets sued, and then all the other superheroes get sued, and then eventually they all get fired,
Mhm.
right? And what happens is he's in a position of influence, right? He's not a mentor yet, because he's not
Right.
reaching out, but he's in a position of influence. He's one of the more popular superheroes. He's famous. People love him. And so he's got a position of influence, and then it's taken away from him,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what's interesting is he never backtracks. He never goes back to try a new career internally, right? He is a superhero, and he sees himself that way. He validates that by doing and saving people and doing things.
The vigilante work.
The vigilante work. So he continues in the validation stage of change of the career. And when he gets the job, it simply pushes him back to the influence. And actually, interestingly, as you go through the movie, he becomes the mentor for his children.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be the mentor all along, right? When he learns about his son putting the tack on the teacher's chair, he's
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, you must have been booking it." He's like, "No, Bob, that's bad."
So would Elastigirl, the mom, would she have had an easier time with the transition because she stepped into being a career as a mother?
See, the thing about Elastigirl that's really interesting is I love in the movie when they're interviewing him, she's like, "Give up my career? What? I'm on the top." And but really, when she commits to marry Mr. Incredible, she's already switching the career
Yeah.
in her mind. So when they lose their jobs as superheroes, that doesn't actually challenge her
Right.
position. She's already searched out a new career that she was already starting to work on. And so now she was able to just go through the mimicking and the internalizing and externalizing her own role as a mother and as a homemaker. Because obviously she's not working outside the home.
Right.
She's a homemaker. And she's internalized, externalized, and validated that position. However, she's struggling with validation. Why?
Because it's not enough for Mr. Incredible.
Yeah, because her husband still sees her as a superhero and not as a homemaker.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't actually support her role the way she sees it.
Yeah.
And it's not until he gets his job where he's working that he starts to validate her. He starts to validate her, and she starts to feel validated again. But that's because he's not able to validate her because he wants to be a superhero. And he sees them as one.
So I'm wondering, when Bob gets the job on the island and he starts doing all those things, like he's happier, he's giving validation and things like that, would that be because his career is now kind of more in line with his internal hero, which is giving him the energy to have that courage to, act the way he would want to
Right,
act?
to be who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, interestingly, Mrs. Incredible, she is happy to integrate both of those careers together. In the first movie, anyways, but she's not. She even when she's being the superhero, and her entire dialogue is about being a homemaker.
Right.
It's about our relationship with each other, the relationship with our kids. She's not talking about superhero work.
Right.
She's talking about what she has internalized and externalized and felt validated with him. But all of a sudden that, when she learns, she's afraid that he's having an affair, and that of course challenges that validation. But you can see that she has switched careers in her mind. She's no longer sees herself as a superhero. She sees herself as a homemaker.
Right.
He sees himself as a superhero. And so you can see how that works. It's just a fascinating.
Yeah.
And then he gets to be the mentor finally and mentor his children, right? That he's been wanting to be for quite a while. And so it's a fascinating show. Now, we're not going to get into the second one because I think it messes the whole thing up.
It kind of does.
They do that with a lot of their shows, the Disney and Pixar. You get to the second movie, it's like, what happened? You guys, you had all this wonderful development, and now you've wrecked it. But anyways, so evaluate is the last stage of change. It's the one that is going to either propel you forward into the integrated role of identity, or it's going to send you back through a midlife crisis to try to reestablish yourself in a different identity. All right, is there anything else we need to talk about in this one? I think we covered
it, yeah.
All right, very good. So we will see you next time when we talk about the integrated role.